Well, we got married finally. We went to Pocono Mountains and I borrowed her dad's car because mine wouldn't make the trip. I was afraid. But we had a good time up in the Poconos. And when we got back then, I had bought a house before we were married. She was under 18 at the time when I was buying it, and for her name to be on it, she'd have had to have a legal guardian appointed. The way the law read, I don't know how. Well, anyway, I bought the house over on Dartmouth Avenue over by Altman Hospital. And we've got most of the furniture with the house, the refrigerator, the stove, and the dining room table and stuff like that. And we bought our own bedroom suite. It was new, and it was delivered and in the house. Except we didn't buy a mattress and box springs because her aunt, who lived right across, about 2 doors down across the street from us, had one she was going to give us. Well, we went over to the house that night about 10 o'clock at night, and everything's set up that there's bed, no box and mat. So at 10 o'clock at night, Marla and I are carrying a box spring and a mattress down the middle of the street and up the steps to make our bed before we could go to bed that night. And that was funny because I said if anybody would have seen us, they'd have thought we were stealing the stuff. We had, at our house, we had a door that went from the living room into the kitchen, but then you could also go into the dining room and into the kitchen. Well, this door we didn't have much of a solid wall because the one was all fireplace like trenches in there and the other one was all window. So I had this door closed off, plastered over, and then I painted a big Oriental mural. She was into Oriental, everything Oriental, and so I painted this big, it was a paint by number thing. You put the stencil on the wall and then colored it in it was with gold and silver and all that stuff. And I painted that, it covered the whole wall. And for a sofa, her dad had made the girls' beds out of doors. He had made 2 boxes and then put doors on them that lifted up and you could store under it. So for the first couple of years we were married, we used that for a sofa for the first year. And we had this cushion on it, and then we made a cushion for the back, and that was our sofa. Then we bought a sofa. Just before we moved in with her mom and dad, we bought the sofa. I remember she picked it out, and it was kind of gold. And I said to the salesman, I said, "Now, is that nylon? Because I want something that'll clean up, you know, we got kids." "Oh yeah, it's nylon, it'll clean up." Well, we only had it about a week or 2, and her sister came over, and she had a little baby then too, and she laid the baby down there to change it, and she peed on it, and it left a stain. So I called, she was going to pay for it, her sister, called in one of these professional cleaners, and he said, "You can't clean that, that's Shantung silk, gold with black thread run through it." And he said, "It won't clean." Well, I was furious. I went back to Chetton's Furniture, it was at that time, over there where, on corner of 30th and Martindale there, where that furniture store is now. So I went back to Chetton, and he's the one that I talked to, and I told him, I said, "You told me that was nylon and it's silk, and it can't be cleaned now. I want you to pay to have it recovered." "Well, I'm not going to do it." Well, I had a client that was an attorney, and I talked to him, and he said, "Well, Chetton's my client too, let me talk to him." So about a week later, we got a call from Chetton, and we had moved in with her mom and dad then, and the sofa. So he took it, and I said to Marla, what do you want this time?" She says, "I want nylon, but I want white." Oh God, white. She got it. Well, it didn't last long either. It was a mess after about a year and a half. This Jim Warner I was talking to you about, he stayed good friends with me and Marla, and he came down almost every weekend. As a matter of fact, I think you kids got to know him as Uncle Jim, because he just went every place with us. We went to New York to visit a friend of Marla's that was in the wedding, and Jim kind of liked her, and so the three of us went to New York. Marla was pregnant with Trent then. He wasn't born, but her sister that her mom was pregnant with had been born. She was just a little girl. And I remember on the way home from New York, she couldn't wait to get home because she missed her little sister so much. I said, wow. Well, when we had Trent, and of course we didn't do as much. But Trent or Jim Warner spent almost every weekend with us. He'd come down on a Friday night after work and stay till Sunday night. And I remember one time we pulled a gag on my mom. It was a Sunday afternoon, and we were going to go to the movies, and the movie was in North Canton. And it's the only time in the town, all the time I was with Hancock, that I had to do something on a Sunday for the company. I had an appointment for a partnership policies. It was going to be a pretty good sale. So I said to Jim, it was in North Canton, and I said to Jim and Marla, I said, all right, I'll go on this sale, and I'll be done, and you guys meet me at the theater. You come on up and meet me at the theater. So they said, okay. Well, just for ornament, they stopped at my mom's house, my mom and dad's. And so my mom said, well, what are you guys doing? I said, oh, we're going to the movie. He said, well, where's Don? And Marla said, well, he's home with the kids. We had a babysitter. She says, you two are going to the movies and he's home? She said, yeah. What's wrong with that? Well, of course, like I said, my mom was, and she didn't take to that too well. But I didn't realize they'd done that until we got out of the theater and they told me what they did. So I had to talk to my mom and tell her what was going on later, so she didn't get, because she'd have spread all over town that my Marla was cheating on me with my best friend. But that was a real close relationship. The three of us were like the Three Musketeers. And my wife, Marla, had always liked funny hats. She bought them with feathers in them, and Jim used to tease her about her hats because she wore them to church. Back then, ladies had to be covered. It was mandatory that you either had to wear a babushka, which was like a little doily on your head, or a hat for women. And Jim used to just tease her all the time about her stupid hats. I remember one time I called her at lunchtime. My territory was in North Canton, where Marla and his mom and dad lived. And a lot of times I'd take her over there and leave her there while I ran my territory and then stop in there for lunch. But she was home this day and I called her and she was crying. And I thought something happened to one of the kids. And I said, what's wrong? She said, we had a dog. She said, the dog ate my new hat. I thought it was something major. And he ate her hat. And she was just in tears over it. But Marla was like that. Marla was extremely sensitive about everything. I mean, you could hurt her feelings without even trying. I know I used to walk on tiptoes around her sometimes when she was in one of those moods because I don't know, I believe to this day that Marla had a little bit of low self-esteem because she used to always say about her sister used to be the smart one in school and she was the dummy, and she wasn't. She got good grades, but because her sister was straight A's and she was A and B, she figured that Karen was the smart one and she was the dummy. And I think her mom and dad made her feel that way a little bit too. If your sister can get straight A's, you can get straight A's.
Do you remember when you first found out that she was pregnant with Trent?
I came home from work one night and she said that she had to make an appointment with the doctor. She thought she was pregnant. We made an appointment and she was. So I was thrilled about that, I really was. She was almost 6 months pregnant before we told the family because she didn't show that much, especially with Trent, the first one. And my mom and dad had a cow. I wasn't making that much money. And things were a little tight for us and they said, you should have waited. Her mom and dad was excited. I don't know why. But, and I was excited. I was really excited. I remember when Trent was born, she was in labor for 36 hours. I mean, 3 minutes apart labor, hard labor, delivery labor. And they thought they were going to have to go cesarean section. And this was at the old Altman Hospital when it was down there back at St. Pete's, where St. Pete's is now, across from McKinley High School. And it was late at night, and her dad and her uncle and I were sitting downstairs. There was a big room, it was a waiting room. And we were the only ones in there, and we were playing pinochle. And I'd go up every once in a while and check on her. And she was in a lot of pain, a lot of pain. And I was really scared. And her dad said, well, that's what happens when you have kids. You know, that goes with the territory. So finally the nurse came down and said, your baby's born and it's a boy. We didn't know ahead of time what it was going to be. I was hoping it was a boy. And it was Trent. And I went up and looked at him, and he was such a cute little fella. But I remember after he was, the first 6 weeks after she came home with him, I didn't hardly work. I missed a lot of, I didn't call off because on my job, nobody checked on me except 2 days a week. I had to go in. I had to have a certain amount of work done, but I'd try to get it all done in one day because I wanted to be home with the baby. I just couldn't get enough of holding him and playing with him. It was the biggest thrill of my life. I'll never forget it. My first son. Anyway, boy, after he grew up, no, that's another story we'll get to later. Back then, you weren't even supposed to take them out until they were baptized. You're supposed to leave them, not even take them out of the car, in a car, except to bring them home from the hospital and the church. Within a week, he was baptized.
Did Grandpa go to the baptism?
No, my dad, absolutely not. Neither did my mom. Her mom and dad did, of course. But we had him. Well, we had all the kids baptized within a week after they were born. All 6 of them, because even though they changed that, Marla still felt that she didn't want to endanger something happening to him before baptism. And so we had him baptized right away.
How soon after I was born did she get pregnant with Amy then? I know all pretty close.
Amy was, let's see, you were born in April, and Amy was born a year later in August.
But did it just seem like bam, bam?
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like every Christmas we were announcing that Marla was pregnant. It wasn't going over big with my mom and dad at all. After the second one, they really started going through the roof. Things were tight after Trent was born. We were living on Dartmouth, and the house payments were $75 a month, including taxes and insurance, which today seems like peanuts. But back then it was tough. You figure I was making $38 a week. And here I am with 3 people to feed, house payment, gas, utilities. So it looked like we might lose the house. So her dad and mom came to us and said, look, my house, she said, if you can give us $100 a month, you can move in with us and we'll rent your house out. That way they'll make the payments. And I rented it for $100 a month, and paid it directly to the bank, so I was gaining. And she said, and that'll take care of your groceries, your utilities, your house, everything else, which was a lot cheaper. So she was pregnant with Randy. No, Amy. She was pregnant with Amy. And we moved into her mom's and dad's the day she came home from the hospital with Amy. We stayed a year. We moved out the day we came home from the hospital with Randy, 1 year and 3 days later.
Now, what was that year like, living with her parents?
I didn't like it. It was, well, first of all, we got to remember that they had 4 boys, and we had Amy and Trent. So that was 6 kids. And it was bad. It was crowded, and there was no privacy.
Now, did they live over on Harmon?
They lived right where they
where Adam and Shannon?
Yeah. Except that the house wasn't that big then, because they didn't have this porch. Yeah, that was a back porch, and we did make a bedroom in the basement for the boys. And but her mom, I didn't like the way her mom treated the kids, Randy or Amy and Trent. She was really tough on them. And I used to complain to Marla about it, and Marla said, well, what can you say? We live in her house. She's got a right to tell them what they can do and what they can't do. But they couldn't do anything, you know. Go outside or in the basement. So anyway, things got a little better, and the people that was renting my house, he got transferred. And so he had to move out, and it worked out good because we were going to move back in.